Hi everybody, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to learn how to make DIY lotion bars. Hi, my name's Corinne, and here at Spirea, I share videos that weave together plant wisdom, holistic health, self-sufficiency with just a dash of magic. If this sounds interesting to you, I'd love for you to stick around. So continuing with the theme of herbal-inspired Yuletide winter holiday gifts, I wanted to teach you guys how to make some DIY lotion bars. And if you didn't see my previous video on making herbal chai honey, I really recommend you check that out. I'll post a link up here. It's a really simple but delicious gift, and I'm sure people will love it. And when you check that out, make sure you also click on the blog post, because I created a PDF tags that you can actually print off and attach to your jars of herbal honey. Anyway, back to lotion bars. One of the reasons I really like this recipe is that it's really simple, easy to do. Most of you will have exactly what you need at home already. And they're really great for winter time when the hands get dry and cracked and you want something that has really clean ingredients that will help moisturize your hands, especially if you've got really dry, cracked hands. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start with the basic recipe, and from there you guys can play. You can tweak with the oils that are used, you can tweak with the butters, and kind of come up with some really great combinations. So you really only need 3 basic ingredients, and that is oil of some kind. I'm going to be using a herbal infused oil. It's not necessary, but the one I'm going to be using is actually peppermint and rosemary infused herbal oil. You can use calendula herbal oils, you can use lavender, plantain, maybe you've got some really cool ones kicking around the house. Anything goes, or you can just use a regular carrier oil. I prefer either almond oil or apricot kernel oil. Those ones tend to be the nicest to work with, but you can even use olive oil. And you can use straight coconut oil. Actually, my recipe is going to include a little bit of coconut oil too. You're going to need a butter of some kind. The easiest one to find would be shea butter. I'm going to be using a combination of some cocoa butter and some shea butter to try to get like a mint chocolate thing going on. And you're going to need beeswax. So you're also going to need a vessel of some kind to pour your lotion bars in. I have these nifty little molds that I got when I was experimenting with making kind of like those beeswax melts, but you could use anything silicone would actually work really well. So if you've got silicone muffin cups, you can use those. A lot of people like to use the silicone ice cube trays or the little mini loaf pans. It really doesn't matter. It just has to be something that it's going to be fairly easy to pop your lotion bar out of once they have set. All right, so let's get started. You are going to need a double boiler for this recipe because you don't want to be putting a saucepan directly on the heat and having things like beeswax and oils because the temperature gets too hot. So this is the top half of my double boiler, and I will use that to measure my ingredients. But if you don't have one, you can make one. It's actually pretty easy. You just get a pot and you can put a bowl right on top. And I usually like to have a toothpick maybe just propped in right there just so the steam can escape. So you can do a makeshift double boiler at home really easily. I know some recipes say that you can microwave this as well. I don't have a microwave. I haven't had one in 15 years, so I can't speak to that. I'm sure you're welcome to experiment. If you're planning on getting into salve making, lip gloss making, lotion bar making, of any of these kinds, I really recommend having a double boiler and having some kitchen tools that are for beeswax only, because they're really hard to clean afterwards, and you don't want a lot of beeswax going down the drain, especially if you're on septic or even older home. It's going to coat those kitchen pipes and the house pipes, and it's just going to be a total disaster. So I do recommend having some tools that are for beeswax only. I also highly recommend, and I'm going to do my best to kind of measure this out for you guys too, for those who don't have a kitchen scale, but again, if you're going to get into any type of medicine making at all, tinctures, teas, salves, balms of any kind, the kitchen scale is going to be one of your best investments. Check out my video on my favorite herbal equipment. I'm going to link that up here too, because it's not expensive to get into this, but there are some things that will make your life more challenging if you don't have. And a kitchen scale is one of those. I bought this for 30 bucks like 10 years ago. I think I've changed the batteries twice. It's not an expensive investment, but it's definitely worthwhile. So, and don't worry about writing all of this down in terms of ingredients, because I am going to post a blog as well. That'll be in the description below. So that way, if you want a written, typed out version of the recipe and you don't want to have to memorize it, you can just head on over to my blog. So I'm going to put my double boiler on my scale and I'm going to zero it out. So that way the weight of the double boiler is not included in all of this. So I'm going to start with my beeswax. You're going to need 85 grams of beeswax. And when I measured this out, it was approximately 3/4 of a cup. And you can use these little beeswax pellets like I have here. I've used beeswax bricks. Whatever works for you, you're going to need 85 grams for this recipe. All right. Awesome. So next you're going to need 113 grams of shea butter. And this one was a little bit more difficult for me to measure out. And when you see my shea butter, you'll understand because it's kind of in these big chunks. So it's really hard for me to measure out 113 in cups. But since the 85 grams of beeswax was about 3/4 of a cup, you're probably looking at about 1 cup, or let's say an equal portion of beeswax to shea butter. But if you're getting specific like I am, you want 113 grams. And I'm actually going to do a combination of cocoa butter and shea butter. And this is where you can have fun and experiment. You can get coconut butters, you can get pumpkin butter, mango butter, you can get rosehip butters. There's so many really amazing options. So have fun with it. So I'm going to zero out that scale again. And my goal is to get to 113 by combining my cocoa butter and my shea butter. Now, if you've ever worked with cocoa butter before, you're going to know it's quite a bit harder than shea butter. So you don't want to do 100% cocoa butter in this, or else it's not going to melt nicely in the hand. So I'm just going to add in about, I'd say about 1/3 of my measurement's going to be cocoa butter, and the rest is going to be shea. All right, I made a big mess with the shea butter, but I have it all measured out now. So there's my 85 grams of beeswax and my 113 grams of butter combined. So I did a little bit of cocoa butter and some shea butter. So now I'm going to measure out my oils. So you basically want a 1/2 cup of oil total. I'm going to be doing 1/4 cup of a herbal infused peppermint rosemary oil. And then I'm going to be doing 1/4 cup of coconut oil. And like I said, feel free to play with this. You know, if you have some nice rose petal infused oils or some calendula oil or lavender oil, really you can have lots and lots of fun. Or if you just want to use straight coconut oil, that's an option as well. Or if you just want to use, you know, 1/2 cup of olive oil, you can do that. I'm not a big fan of olive oil in most topical applications, at least not for my skin. I find it too thick and it doesn't absorb nicely. That's why I tend to go with either apricot kernel oil or almond oil. So there I've got 1/4 cup. And actually let's, there we go, 1/4 cup of coconut oil. I always try to use organic ingredients if possible, but again, it's not necessary. Work with what you have. There we are. And I find tools like knives and stuff very, very handy in this. And also, as you can see, chopsticks. Chopsticks are one of my favorite tools to use, especially when working with beeswax. And if you can get the takeout chopsticks, even better, because if they get all destroyed in your salve making, you can just throw them out. It's not the end of the world. And then next is my herbal infused oil. So again, you could use whole 1/2 cup of herbal infused oil and skip the coconut oil together if you're allergic to coconut. That's no problem. So I'm going to add this herbal infused oil into my mixture. And there's an option, once this is all melted on the stovetop, there is an option to add essential oils if you so choose, and I'll go into that in a bit. But right now we're gonna head on over to the stove and we're gonna put this on kind of a medium to low simmer so we can get all of these ingredients melted. So this is what you're looking for. You want your lotion bars to be completely in liquid state, and I've actually turned my heat off and started to let this cool down a little bit. I even have a tea towel that's dedicated to messy beeswax projects because when you try to pour this from one vessel into another, it can be, as I say, messy. So I've allowed this to cool sufficiently. This would be when you would add your essential oils. You don't want to add it in when it's still really, really hot because your essential oils are just going to evaporate off. If anybody has those old school essential oil diffusers where you put the candle underneath, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the heat, and then those oils evaporate off into the air. So because I wanted kind of a mint chocolate feel, I'm going to add about 10 to 15 drops of peppermint essential oil, probably closer to 10. I would not add more than 20 drops in this recipe. 5, 6, 7, it's not coming out, 7, 8, 9, 10. And the reason why I'm going lighter with peppermint, if anyone's ever worked with it before, it's very cooling and has kind of a more stronger application. So if you're using your floral scents, you probably could go up to, I'd say 20 drops total. So if you want to use a collection of essential oils, I wouldn't do any more than 20. Now I'm going to pour it into my measuring cup that I have dedicated for pouring out beeswax, because I find pouring from a double boiler very difficult, especially because I'm going to be pouring into smaller containers. So I'm just going to pour this in, and you'll notice that it's going to harden pretty quickly. So I usually keep the bottom portion of my double boiler on kind of a low simmer, and then just stick the measuring cup back in there to melt all of the beeswax. So I'll meet you back over at my kitchen island for pouring out our lotion bars. So as you can see, I have my lotion bars are all poured out, and you can see these ones are the ones that I did most recently because it does set up pretty quickly. But you don't want to touch them until they're completely set, and that's when you're going to remove them from your molds. So this recipe made what you see here, plus actually a little bit more. I'm probably going to get about 2 or 3 more little bars. So if you want to half the recipe, if you only have maybe one gift to make or just want to make it for yourself, you can totally do that as well. So my lotion bars are all set up and they look so pretty. I'm really happy with how they turned out. As I mentioned in the previous segment, I did have some leftover, so I actually just put it into a tin, which is a perfectly acceptable option too. This is more like a lotion salve than a bar, of course, but it works just as well. And to use this, you would just take your lotion bar, put it in between your hands, warm it with your hands, and then it'll start to melt a bit. And then put it back in whatever container you decide to put it in, and then just rub it into your hands, and it'll absorb fairly quickly. It's not going to absorb as quickly as a commercial lotion, but that's because commercial lotions have a lot of really questionable ingredients that allow it to absorb quickly like that. As for packaging, you could use small mason jars. You could use little stainless steel tins or aluminum tins if you have them. You could put them in little pouches. Really, it's up to you how you'd like to package this. Now, don't forget to check out the rest of my Yuletide holiday videos. I'll post a link to the playlist up here. I have lots of fun things for you to play with. And if you have any questions or comments about DIY lotion bars, you can definitely leave those below, and make sure you head over to the blog so you've got the written instructions on how to make this. And until next time, this is Corinne from Spirea Herbs, wishing you health and wellness.